Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:02 p.m. I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 6 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. Would also like to give a shout out to Connor, who is in the back, helping to produce our board's broadcast via Zoom, YouTube, and Comcast Channel 20. So we will move now on to recognitions and celebrations of outstanding contributions of our students and staff. Mr. Siegel.
Thank you very kindly. 2 Auburn High School seniors, Emma Otts and Ayush Balavat, were named National Merit Scholarship Award semifinalists in September, along with approximately 16,000 students across the country recognized for their exceptional academic ability and potential for success in rigorous college studies. The nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors. Emma recently learned that she is a finalist for the award, and now she is competing for one of more than 7,000 National Merit Scholarships worth more than $30 million that will be offered in the spring from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. National Merit Scholarship winners are chosen from the pool of finalists based on their abilities, skills, and accomplishments. Congratulations to both these students and their teachers, their families, and their friends for this outstanding accomplishment. Well done. Jefferson High School students Rihanna Tremethick and Emma Carmona finished in 1st and 2nd place respectively in the Poetry Out Loud regional competition. They are among only 16 students across the state to advance to the Illinois State Poetry Out Loud competition and compete virtually. The competition is part of a national program that encourages high school students to learn about great poetry through memorization, performance, and competition. Congratulations to Rihanna and Emma's teachers and coaches, Doug MacArthur and Amanda Ellis, and congratulations to their families and friends for supporting them through this season. Again, well done.
Do we have Karen Peterson here? Okay. Okay, so we do not have a public speaker for tonight. So I will open it up for board member comments at this time. Mr. Siegel.
I would like to welcome Jude McCulloch back to the boardroom.
All
It's
right.
great to have her in person.
Yes, all right. We should give her a round of applause. Huh? Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I should give you a round of applause for dealing with my Zooming for the
Okay.
Zooming month.
It's
Thank
much
you so
better to
much.
have you here in person.
And it's better to be here. Thank you.
That's right. I just want to, I don't really talk about this committee much, that Jude and I are on the district leadership team, but we meet every month with, I don't know, about 25 or 30 people, and it involves some superintendents, some cabinet members, some teachers, principals, REA representative, ARs, that kind of stuff. And we just are a listening sounding board, and I just want to give a shout out because Mondays, even though we didn't really talk about specific things that need, but we talked about how we can do a better job in communicating And I think it was worthwhile to spend time on figuring out better ways that we as a board, we as a district, we as a REA group, how we can get word out about information. And it's been so critical this year because of the pandemic and not having everybody in person. It's been really, really hard. So we have got lots of ideas, and you're starting to see some improvement in how messages are sent out, how questions are answered in fact sheets and things like that. So a lot of improvement has really kind of started, and we've got a long way to go, but we're working on it. So shout out to everybody on that. And, I was thinking, Earl, that maybe updates from the listening sessions of DLT might someday become part of the committee of the stakeholders report. It'd be a good way to share that information to the board and the cabinet members that are here about activities kind of summarized from the DLT group. So food for thought on that one. Any other board member comments? Okay, we'll move on then to the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
I'm going to make my remarks very brief this evening because we did have some items that we needed to get to from the committee of the whole meeting. Like, I know we're going to be talking about the Freshmen on Track and Freshman Academy in a little greater detail. I do want to say that I've had the opportunity to really change how I spend my time in the last few weeks and really last year or so in terms of developing what I hope is going to be a really high quality set of systems to make sure that I'm getting some firsthand experience listening to different people in our district. We're about 8 months in to having a group of African-American assistant principals and principals that I'm meeting with on a monthly basis, and big shout out to Maurice Davis for putting that together, and Taryn Turner, who is doing some administrative internship with me to help coordinate that group, and some really powerful insights there. Also have had the opportunity we are now 3 meetings in coming up here with our students, and we have a really powerful, smallish, but hopefully growing group of African-American students that we're getting perspective from. And finally, want to really highlight a staff group that we're putting together as well. So Board Member Siegel has done a good job of highlighting that, but I want to point out that, the personal impact that's having on me has been really palpable and noticeable as I've had some of those firsthand accounts about how our system can be improved. I also want to point out that I've been doing my school visits a little bit differently. As many of you know, my practice of school visits in a typical year involves going into classrooms, meeting with the principal, and then having an all faculty meeting and doing kind of a town hall meeting. The town hall meeting was not a good idea in a pandemic, because we really weren't supposed to assemble. So I've really increased the amount of time I'm spending having one-on-one conversations with all staff in the building. And I have to tell you that there certainly were parts of faculty meetings that I enjoyed, but these one-on-one conversations have really, really been powerful to get personal experiences, as I've had a chance to just really listen and find out how people's years are going, but also just to say thank you to as many people as I can, because for all of the frustrations that we've all collectively had about the challenges we've gone through over the last 2 years, really, when you add in our tech crisis, it's been so great to just have the opportunity to personally say thank you to as many people as possible for the extra efforts that they're doing. So I've really enjoyed that practice as well, and hope to have more to report to the board as we continue that. We have some big plans for staff appreciation moving into the month of May, and we just really want to be in a season of gratitude here as we move to inviting students back on April 19th. I think it's going to be extremely important that we're working hard to let people in our district know that as we come to the end of a very, very long and challenging year, that we extend as much appreciation as we can to our faculty and staff, and also to our students and their families for all of the hard work everyone's done to pull off this year. So thank you, and look forward to continuing that conversation.
Would like to ask if you'd make a brief comment about graduation ceremonies, or Mr. Dotson can do that. Okay.
Yes, great news. And really, I want to give a great deal of credit to Dr. Vosberg and the high school principals. They've worked very closely with Earl Dotson Jr. and his team to plan ceremonies. And I will defer to Dr. Vosberg, but I can tell you that we have found a way to have in-person ceremonies to the best of our ability under very challenging circumstances. So I'll lateral it over to Dr. Vosberg.
Thank you. We are working closely with the principals. We did send out a press release yesterday, made the news. We're looking to have in-person graduations at our stadiums, and we have multiple rain dates scheduled in the event that we have bad weather. We are also, a big change will be the ceremony. We broke it into two parts by academy. So there'll be a session 1 and a session 2 per high school, split up based on their academies. We're trying to make it as normal as possible. We know the class of 2021 has missed out on a lot of opportunities, and we're trying to normalize it the best we can following the safety guidelines. In our press release, we also announced that June 4th there'll be a prom, not a traditional prom, of course, but school activities on school site for the seniors to celebrate their time in our district. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item then is the report and action items that proceeded through the internal external stakeholder relations committee. Mr. Siegel, are there any follow-up items from your committee?
There are no follow-up items from our committee.
Okay. We have 4 board policies that proceeded through the performance monitoring committee. They are board policy 6.30 for instruction, the organization of instruction, board policy 6.170, Title I programs, instruction, board policy 6.260, complaints about curriculum and instructional materials, and board policy 6.340, student testing and assessment programs. The revisions were all sent to you in your packet. Is there a consensus to approve these policies with one motion and one vote? Everybody okay with that? All right. So I will take a motion then to approve those 4 board policy revisions.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. So any comments or discussion? Thank you. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the 4 board policy revisions.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Mrs. McCulloch, on the follow-up items from your committee.
In a moment, we're going to hear, you know what, let's just hear that first, and then I have another one afterwards.
Okay.
So if you remember, we laid over the Tier 3 update report, and so I'm going to cede the floor to Ms. Detman and Ms. Peterson. I'm not sure who's doing the verbal report. Okay, Brooke is going to do that. Thank you. And again, if you hold your questions to the end, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any.
No luck with the microphone? Okay. Connor, we might need you for the podium microphone. There he is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Okay. Thank you for having me back tonight. I do have a couple of folks with me to explain our progress on Freshman Academy. We do have Bridget French, who's our Executive Director of College and Career Readiness, and Jeff Lowry, who's our Data Research Manager. As you remember, academic return on investment helps us to answer the question, what works best, for whom, and at what cost? We'll jump right into the Freshman Academy tonight. Again, the first step is to really define success. So we worked through that as a group, and we landed on 2 metrics, freshmen on track and student engagement. Our specific freshman on track definition is that we would like our 20 and 21 school year freshman on track number to increase by 10% as compared to the 18-19 school year. We selected the 18-19 school year because the 19-20 school year was such an odd year that we didn't feel it was comparable for us to base our number on. The 18-19 school year number was 65%, so we set our goal at 75%, and we are right now at 69% for this metric. Our second item was student engagement. We selected 5 questions from our 5 Essentials survey and tweaked them slightly in order to tell us a bit more about the freshman experience. We administer that survey in the fall and in the spring, and our goal was to see as our benchmark year at least 50% improvement from the student's score in fall as opposed to the spring score. We obviously don't have that information quite yet. We have not administered the second round. So what we can tell you is that 1,064 students out of approximately 1,900 did participate in the first round. When we come back in the summer, we will have an actual metric to tell you on that. The next component of an ARI study, again, is that segmentation data pertaining to unique student characteristics, and I'm going to ask Jeff to come up and talk a little bit more about this.
Good evening. On the right side of the slide, as Brooke alluded to, are the student characteristics that we are focusing on for this ROI study. Like with the Reading Horizon study, we attempt to identify a handful of characteristics that get at the root cause for whether a program is successful. In this case, it's whether freshman academy students are engaged and on track to graduate. We do track typical demographic indicators like ethnicity and gender, but those can be overly broad. So we look to identify additional variables that influence student success, but also still relevant to the program. We then take these characteristics and segment them by data into meaningful groups, and then determine to what extent each of those segments are on track to our definitions of success. So I'll walk through each of these characteristics and their segments. So the first being, like I said, we do focus on ethnicity and gender. And so when we look at ethnicity, our 3 biggest groups there, you do see a disparity amongst those 3. Likewise with gender, you see a disparity there as well. And then the variables kind of specific to this study here.
Okay. Ever ready.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Connor. All right, the first characteristic for this study is learning location, and we've got 2 segments, of course, in-person and full-time remote, and you can see a pretty good disparity between those 2 segments. Next is attendance group, and this is attendance in the first semester. And so the team came up with 4 segments with delineations that we thought were appropriate and could best inform our study. And you can see the delineations and segments there. And you can see that the on-track percent for the first semester does drop as the attendance drops. So there is a bit of an anomaly. You can see the greater than 97% has a slightly lower on-track percent. That'll be something we'll keep an eye on at the end of the year and see if that pattern repeats. But otherwise, it's a pattern that you would expect as attendance drops, the on-track drops. Next is behavior incidents. And for this, we had to look at last year's data. We have very limited behavior data this year for a variety of reasons. One being we've got a significant portion of students that are remote. So we used last year's complete set of incident data to inform this year's study. And the segments we came up with there are 0 to 1, kind of an isolated incident, 2 to 5, and 6 or more. And just to clarify, we're looking at just level 2 and higher. So level 1 is just a very minor behavior incident, and we're looking at level 2 and higher. And you can see as the number of incidents goes up, the on-track percent greatly drops. Next characteristic is data from our fall engagement survey, which Ms. Peterson mentioned was also one of our definitions of success. And with the definition of success, we're looking to see how much the engagement increased from the fall survey to the spring survey. In using it as a characteristic and segmenting it, we took the fall survey data and split the students into 4 equal groups by percentile. And you can see there as the percentile drops, meaning a lower engagement score, the on-track percent drops as well. We did have 1,064 that took the survey. We had 900 or so that did not respond, and you can see they have the lowest on-track percent. So you could, by proxy, kind of consider that perhaps a not engaged group, as they did not take the survey for perhaps a variety of reasons, but in general, they had the lowest on-track percent. Next characteristic is unweighted GPA. When we first built this study, we wanted to look at PSAT. Last year, we did not have much PSAT data. This year, we are going to be getting that data, but we don't have that at this time. So in the meantime, we looked at unweighted GPA, and you can see as the GPA lowers, the on-track percent does as well. And you can see a really sharp decrease from that 2 to 3 and 1 to 2. And that really just kind of underlines how we really don't want to move students from just to being a F student to a D student or a C student. We really need to move them into that A and B GPA group to really see them on track to graduate. So this is just a mid-year study after the first semester. We will rerun this data at the end of the year and see how all these segments compare and firm up our insight as to what this data is telling us. And I'll turn it over to Bridget French. Thank you.
Good evening. So what have we learned through all of this? We want to attempt to root what we learned in these 3 program components. The first is smaller learning communities, the second is the freshman seminar class, and the third is involvement in the community. So what sets academies aside from a traditional high school is the smaller learning community model. So in a traditional high school and in our high schools, teachers meet by content area. That's the PLC, or professional learning community. In an academy model, teachers also meet by academy, or SLC. In the case of the freshman academy, those are led by our freshman academy principals. And ideally, our goal was to bring segmented data to our freshman APs so that they could take that data and make data-informed decisions with their teams to help move freshmen forward. And what we found was we really didn't have systems in place to reliably gather that data and analyze it. And while Jeff has done amazing things moving us forward, we still really at the beginning of the study weren't in a place where freshman APs consistently across all high schools had reliable access to that data. And concurrently, what we also learned was that our freshman APs really needed some professional development in leading their teams, especially with an equity lens. So we partnered with the National Equity Project to add freshman academy principals and freshmen on track as our 3rd probe in our work with the National Equity Project, the other 2 being the principal learning and support and listening systems. So the info that we're collecting from NEP and the AP partnership is flowing into the equity systems work, which the board hears more about through Mr. Siegel's committee, the internal, external stakeholders. The next indicator is the freshman seminar class. This class is formally named College and Career Readiness, and all of our freshmen take this course. Our leading indicator, or what we can measure at the end of the year, is how many students have completed a 10-year plan. Our lag indicator is what we will measure next year, and that is how many students have changed their academy in their sophomore year. That is typically when a student would make the decision that they have chosen the academy that they're potentially not interested in. If we're doing a really good job in college and career readiness or freshman seminar, students should be well equipped to make that decision. There are always anomalies, of course, you know, a student that passes out when they visit a hospital and decides that the health academy isn't there for them. But overall, we like to see most students remaining in their academy 10th through 12th grade. There is currently a high failure rate in this course we've seen for the first time this year. And what we found was in this difficult year in the pandemic, when students are having to choose between their core content courses and this course, which is not required to graduate, unfortunately, they're making that tough decision and choosing their core content area. Also, this course was developed to be a competency-based model, which means we really are measuring kids on the mastery of skills, not so much an assessment-based course. And so what we've learned is that our teachers potentially aren't as comfortable as maybe we thought that they were teaching in this model. And so our team, the CCR team, is working with all of our teachers on some professional development to make sure to teach students in this way. And then involvement in the community is the final component. Unfortunately, this year we were not able to have the Academy Expo, which is run by our partners at Alignment Rockford, and is typically an event that all students, they explore a myriad of different career demonstrations at booths at the Indoor Sports Center, excuse me. But that event did not take place this year for obvious reasons. And there were two schools, Guilford and Jefferson, that did host a virtual career exploration, which we were very happy about. But it did show that when there's not a coordinated approach, some schools do and some schools do not. And obviously we want to ensure that all of our students are having the same experiences no matter what high school they go to. And then Alignment Rockford also did create a video library full of career awareness videos that all of our students had access to. So at this time, we would welcome your questions from any of the three of us.
Board members, questions? Mr. Connor.
Yeah, I've got a number, but this is in part to Mr. Lowry. I don't know exactly how to ask this, but first of all, are we intending to keep this data over a period of time on the individual? Because I assume the individual data points are student-centric, and then you've got all the characteristics of the grades and so on and so forth related to that. So you could track these segments. So like if you see a number, sorry, I gotta go to the number where it shows, you know, on track by attendance, you can identify who is in that under 89% and say, these individuals, you know, this was the outcome, et cetera, and the same at the top. So I assume that that's a capability, so that if we said that we are looking for the freshman on track number to really be meaningful over time, obviously from top to bottom, you'd want to track all the way through their high school careers to see that. And if I might say so, I doubt you'd have this, but the data to look backwards to say, where was student A, student B, student C at the 5th grade, 6th grade junction, or what have you?
Yeah, that's right. We can look back as far as we need to, or continue to track this through graduation. You know, the original intent of the study is to repeat this exercise, you know, on an annual basis until, as long as it makes sense to do so, and that would be a new group of students each year in the freshman academy. But we can surely track these students through their senior year to see what kind of trends and patterns.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of, and for those of you that don't know, and there might be a few of you, that yours truly has been in data for a lot of years, so this is just the nerd alert right up front. But I think some of the standard deviation work on this over time and by more kinds of vectors would really be helpful. And for example, you just brought up about, if you will, turnover. I mean, if part of the discussion is students coming and going, I would think we could track that and also do some correlations. So I think one of the things I'd like to suggest, just looking at this, is there's probably other vectors that or categories that we need to look at, and we don't know what those are. And so, you know, the example that might be brought up is, I know we don't know the economics of the background of all the students, and there's probably no good way to get some of that, but, you know, it would seem to me really relevant to find out, you know, what are some of the factors behind this. One of the things I said at the committee of the whole is that students are a whole person, and that we're just measuring the academic part. There's got to be other factors involved. So that's one general comment. And then as I look at some of the specifics, if you look, and I'm kind of going backwards here, so with apologies, but if you look on slide 10, it talks about in-person versus remote. And I actually thought that would be a larger percentage. So I'm a little surprised, especially given some of the anecdotes I've heard about our remote versus in-person and the results. I think it would be helpful to have some analysis on this one, because one of the things we've all discussed is a real concern that you've had kids that are remote and that they never catch up. I mean, that's, you know, I'm not saying that's an absolute will happen, but it sure seems to me like that's something that we need to understand. And so there's got to be stats that we can track as those remote students go forward. And especially if it was younger, frankly, in their student life, it'll be very interesting to see what that pinging effect is.
Right.
So that would be one as a really good example that I know it won't be longitudinal, but I mean, we could at least show that part over time. Mm-hmm. Another one, I have to say, and I'd love to see the stats, and it seems to me the percentage of male versus female graduation, that gap is growing a bit, but I know for the things that I read, and you know, I'm not a professional educator, but that male students, it seems, are getting further behind. And I look at this and it says first semester on track percentage, 65 to 73, and I wonder, is that a trend? Yeah, that's on 8, 9. Yeah, because I'm wondering if that's not a trend that doesn't continue to grow over time. Or, you know, do students start out relatively the same, or then you have that disparity? But so it seems like all the things that I've read about males and high school graduation, and let alone getting college degrees, that again, that gap has widened. And so I really think that that's something that we don't talk a lot about, but I would certainly think that that would be you know, worth following up on. And then on the ethnicity, for consistency's sake, Mr. Siegel brought up last time that study showing about graduation rates. And in the graduation rates, there were 4 groups, actually 5 groups. So it included Asian Americans and people of 2 or more races. So if we're going to have that in that study, I think we need that same here to show, you know, any parallels.
Sure.
You know, I mean, quite straightforwardly, that had the group at the highest graduation rate was Asian Americans. And so, you know, I'm looking at this slide thinking, you know, really what's going on there. And then obviously tracking that over time. And then if, again, from the standard deviation standpoint. There might be characteristics, what classes are taken, or, and I know we probably can't get this, but, other kids that have to work, or, I mean, there's all sorts of factors that might involve that long-term study. So, because you have such a large data pool, and it seems like we have techniques, I don't know if you have access to something like a Python or, those kinds of tools, but it would seem to me that that's something, and we can always nerd out, and I'll get a hold of you and you can tell me what tools you're using. But my point is we have to have some of these things that we could apply against some of this data. And I'd really be interested in seeing some of that. Sure. So thank you all for being patient with the Nerd Alert part of the program here.
Other board member questions? Mr. Siegel?
Not to out-nerd Mr. Connor, but I think it would be kind of interesting to see these actually broken down by the schools. I think that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, we are tracking On Track on a weekly basis that we share with the freshman APs. And we do break a lot of this down by school and by ethnicity. We're not pulling in all of these characteristics on a weekly basis, but ethnicity and school we are.
Ms. McCullough?
We skipped the 2021 school year. No, is that right? Anyways, because of the COVID, the numbers were you. But we must have an on-track number for that year, do we not?
Yeah, we do. Not handy, I don't believe, but right.
You don't know off the top of your head what it was?
No.
Okay.
We can
If you
easily
could
report back on that.
Sure, that'd be great. The other thing, and I think it's helpful for the non-educators or, parents, anybody who might be listening, is what defines on track? Because there is actually a state definition for that.
Right.
But what are we using?
Right. The state requirement is 10 passing grades and no more than one core F, no more than one F in a core subject, which is math, English, science, social science. The RPS requirement is just one slight tweak. It's more stringent. It's 12 passing grades and no more than one core F after the freshman year.
And the 12 is because we have a higher level of classes that they have to pass just to graduate.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the end game is 48 credits.
And the state's end game is 42? No?
I think it's 42.
I think so too, but it's because of that disparity, the additional ones.
Right.
So 10 and 1, and we have 12 and, are we 12 and 1, did you say?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. So they'll be back to, after they, they finish out the year, have your another engagement survey, and have the freshman on track numbers for how many students have passed, and you think that'll be this summer, is what I heard you say. All right.
I want to add a comment then. I'm absolutely baffled by the lower on-track rate for higher attendance of 97. That just doesn't make any sense to me at all, why that would be lower.
At first thought it might have been like a really small sample size, but it's not necessarily a small group.
Right, okay.
So some anomaly there.
So, Bridget, I think this question is for you. The data shows, I'm looking particularly at the slide that says, where is it? GPA, that's, I think it's slide 14 maybe. So, I mean, there's a huge drop off here for students that have GPAs, in that 1 to 2 point range. And so what's critical for me is, so what do we do about that? What are the interventions that happen for those students who are freshmen, who have a GPA of 1.1 or something like that, so that we can keep them or get them back on track? I guess that's my question. So can you talk a little bit about the interventions that happen?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I could talk about what we're working on right now. Certainly this reflects the fact that, you know, when students get to a certain point, they somewhat give up. And so we need to ensure that we are working with every single student to make sure that they are getting up to that 2.0 and higher. So Amy Gannon, our Director of Multi-Tier Systems of Support, and I have partnered this year to work with all of the counselors to ensure that they are meeting with their students and spending at least 65% of their time or more in a week directly serving students. That's a national best practice from the American School Counselors Association. So that's one. The second is working with Ms. Lawrence and Ms. Cyrus and their teams to make sure that we have all of the social emotional supports in our schools as well. Social workers, behavior intervention specialists, MTSS coordinators. So essentially what we're doing is forming relationships with our students in a deep and meaningful way and making sure every student has a connection with a caring adult. And the interventions really look different student by student. There isn't one blanket approach for all of our kids.
Ms. Pearson has.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So with the low graduation rate that we currently have, why wouldn't we reflect the number of credits to match the state?
I think that is maybe a question for Dr. Jarrett.
You know, that's a great question. And I think what and that will actually come up a little bit as background information for a later agenda item. But at the end of the day, what we decided to do about 8 or 9 years ago, I believe, maybe it was 10 years ago, is when we increased from a 6-period academic day to a 7-period academic day, it gave students 56 chances essentially to get 48 credits. And so the thought was that our students would benefit from having a third year of science, that our students would benefit from having a 3-year sequence of courses called pathway electives. And so we ultimately wanted more opportunities for our students to not only graduate, but graduate college and career ready. And candidly, I think there's been some really good debate about whether or not the strategy to increase to 48 credits has in some ways disadvantaged RPS in terms of our comparisons with other comparable districts across the state and across the country because we have such high standards, and that often isn't reported as an apples to apples comparison. So I think you raise an excellent choice and our conversation topic, certainly one that has been raised on many occasions by multiple members of my team in conversation, and something we'll have to continue to look at. But at the end of the day, it came down to a proportional increase when we added to a 7th guaranteed class per year, so 14 credits available per year adds up to 56. And the idea that we don't want our students failing more than 1 class per year, into that opportunity to truly have opportunities to be ready when they graduated with extra opportunities through electives and other items.
So Ms. Pearson, I would add that I was on the board. And this was a real board initiative. If you want to spend more money on more classes, then students have to be passing them. We're not just giving them more opportunities to fail. So there was an accountability piece, and it was a push by the board to do this. I think we even pushed administration. So because of how it aligns with the rest of the state. But we were providing more opportunity, we were spending more money to do that, and the opportunities shouldn't have been more opportunities to fail. So we aligned, because we have more classes, we expected a higher level of classes passed. That was my memory of the board.
I think that is true as well. And I think if you look at the slide that's up right now, I think you can see that realistically, in many, many cases, we're not losing students by 1 credit here or there. You see that big drop off in the freshman year when we lose students. And so that dropped to 50% when we get to the 1 to 2.0 ratio. When you look at what happens when student attendance drops below 89%, in many, many cases, we certainly have disadvantaged ourselves in terms of comparison statistics, but I think the work is still the same, that when you keep students engaged and connected, in most cases, you're going to be able to keep them at that higher credit area. And I think we'll probably have, that'll be a nice segue into our later conversation today.
You know, what's lost here, we haven't talked a lot about, is the fact that our on-track went up. I mean, the number that you're giving us is, we started at the 65, we're at 69. I don't know how the rest of the districts are doing around us, but through an incredibly challenging time, the fact that we went up is a cause for celebration. And hopefully when we see end of year, we'll continue, you know, we'll see that trending. Whether or not it increases, at least we did make progress. So I think that's a real positive. The other thing is we saw in our board update the information about integrated math, which is freshmen. And I don't know how much that is, you know, freshman algebra was always one of the big classes the students were having difficulty with and failing and keeping them off track. So I'm wondering, with this change and the fact that we see that we don't even have half the teachers that are trained, and so therefore we don't even know that half the classes are doing it, but it's in their schedule and that's what they're supposed to be doing. Has there been any difference in the passing for students who are freshmen in their math now that we've made that switch?
Integrated math continues to be a struggle. It continues to be a high failure course. But with our attention on integrated math as a Tier 2 PDSA, we're working in partnership with Dr. Vosberg and the principals to ensure that not only is the training happening, but that we're seeing those instructional shifts and observations in classrooms. And when the board sees an iteration of our standards of practice that we've drafted, you'll see that those instructional shifts in the math classroom kind of have center stage in our high school standards of practice as an expectation. Math is a gatekeeper course. And when you start to fall behind or lose your sense of identity as a student who can be successful in math, it hinders you far down the road, which is why, back to graduation requirements, having those 3 years of science, social science, and a strong foundation in math opens up greater opportunities for you in your post-secondary life.
Just wanted to add one, aren't the requirements changing in 2025? They have to add 2 years of language.
Yes.
And science and computer stuff,
yes,
right?
Yes, we actually are ahead of the times here in
all
our
right.
PS 205, and we'll have to make some minimal adjustments to meet those expectations.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, so I did want to bring your attention, I kind of ran through quickly the consent agenda items that are coming through. If you have any questions about those, I would expect that when we go to vote on them, you can pull them and ask that. But I wanted to bring attention that one was added, which we typically don't do, and that was the Winnebago is M, and this would be 10M. The Winnebago County Health Department facility rental fee waiver. And I just want to make sure everybody is aware, even though it gives dates, because they came to us now, they're going to up the vaccines. It's available now to everybody over 16. They need locations to do it. It's kind of a last minute piece for them to come to us, so we don't have a lot of, but we have been very generous with opening our doors for anything with the vaccine, whether it's testing or vaccination. I'm sorry, with COVID testing or vaccination. So, but please note that the recommended action on that is that we approve an unlimited use of school facilities. The dates are given under A, but to prevent them from having to come back to us at each meeting with, you know, at the end of the month for May and the like, and we can have a conversation about that if you want, but I did want you to I wanted you to be aware that that's what we will be voting on when that comes up. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Scrivano.
All right, we'll move on to the Planning and Development Committee. We have one action item, and that is the resolution for the advanced spending. Mrs. Yar presented this at our committee of the whole. Is there a motion and a second to approve item 8A, the resolution for advanced spending for fiscal year 22 tentative budget?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Siegel. Any questions or discussion on that item? Mr. Khan?
Just as a reminder, the reason, or one of the main reasons we're doing this is it's a more, from my point of view, a natural cycle. And so we are going up to 25% to allow the district to keep moving forward and to do what I would consider to be normal spending. But it is to give us more flexibility and more information when we do the budget. So that's the end game here. And there are a few things that we're putting in place, but really want to assure the public that really all the checks and balances are still in place, and that all we're trying to do is, God forbid, make a governmental agency a little bit more flexible.
Any other comments on that one? The coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the resolution for advanced spending.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. As you know, Mr. Rollins is absent tonight. Mrs. Yar, are there any follow-up items on your committee?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for my committee on the board governance, we do have the intergovernmental agreement between Rockford Public Schools and the Rockford Park District over the Guilford Tennis Center. On my chart, it's the #1 email and calls that I've gotten for the last 3 weeks is when are we going to open up the Guilford Tennis Center? But I do want to point out this is a 5-year agreement. Mr. Phillips presented this. Mrs. McCulloch had several questions and follow-ups and revisions. So I believe those have all been addressed. We all got a spreadsheet on how many other courts are available through the Park District. You want to address any of the revisions, Mr. Phillips?
I do want to note
Okay.
one. Yesterday, we made a revision to be a little more specific on the use of the courts. Basically saying this is for single use, first come, first serves, and no, people can't organize tournaments.
Okay.
If there is a tournament, they would have to go through our facilities usage agreement process. The one thing I would like to note is during that change, if you go down the paragraph, we have hours listed there. The intent was to have Saturdays and Sundays and Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that got missed during the adjustment yesterday. So I just ask if that could be amended to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, and in the during the summer, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
So when we talked about this at the last meeting, it was 8. So who decided that they wanted to
I believe at the
7?
last meeting it was 7. I had it as 7.
Okay.
Point of order, do
Yeah.
we need to do an amendment to add those? Or do we just, Mrs. Hoadley, is this one where we make the understanding and the change to the minutes?
Mrs. Hoadley is pulling that up right now. Hold on one second.
While she's looking that up, may I ask who is there at 7 a.m. during the summer when we're not having
We'll have our
school? Who will be there to unlock it?
we'll have our daytime custodians, custodial services people.
Because they're 365 hours.
They're throughout the year, correct?
Okay, so we would need a motion to amend the agreement and then amend the agreement and approve it as amended. And then we would draft that amendment and move it forward to the Park District.
So I understood the words that you just said.
Okay.
But I'm not sure I understand what actions we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to actually make an amendment right now?
No,
You would need a motion to amend the agreement
Right.
in order to change it to reflect it would be.
So we'd have to have the amendment agreement as a motion first.
You have to have the motion to amend first.
That's what I just said. So you have to,
Okay.
Don't you have to have the motion for the item
I thought in order to discuss it, you guys never had it on there?
No,
No.
yeah, no, we didn't.
Mine was a point of order.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to ask now for a motion to approve
Okay.
item 9A, the IGA with the Rockford Park District.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connors, or second?
Second.
Any other comments or questions?
So now that there's a motion,
Right?
do I make another motion as an amendment to do just that?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so can you repeat for the record, Mr. Phillips, so that we have the verbiage correct for what we actually need to do to amend?
You turn- yeah, hit
Sorry.
Mike.
During the school year on Saturdays and Sundays, the hours of operation would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Also, during the summer, Monday through Sunday, our hours of operation would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, to the recording secretary, did you get that?
Okay, yes. All right, so.
Could you repeat it one more slowly? I'm trying.
During the school year,
Yeah, during the school year, Saturday and Sunday, hours of operation would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, hold on. Okay, and then the summer.
And then summer, Monday through Sunday, hours of operation would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Thank you.
so Mr. Connor, you're going to make a motion.
I make a motion,
To amend.
as he just said.
All right, to amend that agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Any comments or questions or discussion?
I do have a question.
Okay, go
Do we
ahead.
not have PE classes that use the tennis courts during the summer?
Once again, this agreement, they are open to the public as long as Rockford Public Schools is not using them.
Right. That's the overriding.
Well, I know it's the overriding,
Right,
but if somebody's there and the gym class comes out,
Okay.
I think everything needs to be in writing. We've had enough issues with the Park District before that I think everything needs to be in writing. So during the summer, let me ask again, somebody here who is a teacher, or Ms. Detman, if you're, during the summer, do we have PE classes on those tennis courts?
You got to get closer to the mic.
I'm getting my PE credit
Okay,
in
yeah, okay.
now. In short, no, we don't have PE classes that use the tennis courts during the summer.
Okay, so thank you for that
You're welcome.
clarification. And thank you also for addressing the concerns that I raised previously, as well as the one that I raised at a very late hour this past week when I was concerned about people having those sort of, and the fact that if the Park District wants to give lessons or they want to do tournaments or any of those pieces of things, that is clearly now stated in there that they will go through the facility usage.
Correct, and I've confirmed with the executive director of the Park District, they do not intend to do any tennis programming, but they also understand if at some point within this 5-year agreement they decide to, they need to use our facilities usage agreement process.
Right.
And the agreement clearly states that we will look at the rates for next, that we are only agreeing on that amount for this year. That is what I read,
No, the agreement.
but that we can change it.
Well, yeah, we always have the right to change it, but at this point it's a stated rate, but we can reevaluate.
Okay, and thank you for the list of courts, although just for the record, everybody who sent any emails said,
Yes.
all the Park District courts are crap, which doesn't surprise me for as well as they kept up their bargain on the Guilford courts, so.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend. Oh, Mr. Siegel, I'm sorry.
This almost goes without saying, but I was down in Bloom School shooting hoops the other day, and this subject ran through my head, and so I went over to one of the picnic tables and sat down and thought about it, and thought, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and vote for this. But these emails were running through my head, and I was thinking, really, the quarrel should never have been with the school district. It always should have been with the Park District. And the voices that have been raised should have been at Park District meetings saying, I don't know, maybe you need to raise your tax levy so that we can have really cool tennis facilities. And if you do ever get around to having that conversation, I'll be happy to join you and talk about basketball court facilities because, man, they need help.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Connor.
Well, since you brought it up, let me just say in those emails, the fact is, the point kept bringing up is that we're local taxpayers. And I'd say, yes, you are, but you pay taxes to the park district for activities that relate to physical activity and outdoors and nature and blah, blah, blah. You pay taxes to the Rockford Public Schools to support the students and their, academic and extracurricular achievement. So I want to make it really clear to folks that have that misconception. Your taxes go to RPS students and everybody who supports that. Our job is not to provide, courts or anything else for public use in quite that sense. And we want to do our part, but I really, since almost every email said this, I really want to make it clear that those are different taxes and that you pay them to different institutions for those reasons. So maybe the people that are hot under the collar about tennis ought to be going and supporting the park district in their effort to have better facilities, because they've clearly had their challenges financially. But for us, I think we all have a clear conscience that our number one priority is our students.
Thank you. So first we have to vote on the amendment. So please call the roll on the amendment as presented by Mr. Connor.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes?
Ms. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1
Now
absent.
we have to pass the
And we have to do
IGA agreement, the amended
Yep.
IGA agreement.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Ms. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
The motion as amended passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay. Thank you all. Our next item is the class of 2021 graduation requirements. Mrs. Detman's going to present this item.
Good evening. We, over the course of the last several weeks, have been doing some data analysis to look at the impact of COVID-19 on the graduating class of 2021. And to your early question of, should we look at a reduction of graduation requirements, we believe that in this case, this year, for these students, the answer is yes. There's an attachment in board docs that walks you through a very detailed process of kind of a student level data analysis that we did as a team. And what we've come up with is a proposal to put before you to reduce the total number of credits for the class of 2021 from 48 to 42. This does not reduce their core course requirements. Those are English, math, science, and social science, but rather provide some wiggle room, if you will, in PE and other electives. So by reducing up to 6 credits in PE and other electives, we allow 37 additional students at this point in time to be able to walk across the stage potentially at the end of the year. We know that that is not as big of a group of students as we had hoped. And so there are some other actions that are going to be taking place at the schools as well. First of all, we'll make sure that every student, every graduating senior, or every senior is being in touch with their counselor so that they have a pathway forward toward their degree. There's a few different ways that we can get them there, hopefully. One is that on May 27th, which is the scheduled last day of school for seniors, if a student is short credits but close to graduating, we're going to have them continue to come to school until the very last day. We also are sending out letters to all students who have failed one or two courses this year. I'm sorry, more than 2 courses this year, and we're inviting them into credit recovery or enrollment in Roosevelt. We also have the option of a 5th-year senior. So even if a student is further behind and this one effort doesn't help, we do have a concentrated effort of our counselors on this class of 2021 to help them move beyond high school and reach their goals in post-secondary life. So the proposal before you tonight is simply a waiver of up to 6 credits in PE or other electives, reducing the total number of credits for this class from 48 to 42. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Ms. McCullough.
So according to this, that is going to affect 37 students.
At this point in time, that's what we understand, yes.
Okay. And of the students who you are having them continue to the end of the year, seniors given till June 10th to attend school to complete any outstanding assignments, if they, at that point, at the type of time for graduation, if they are not passing, they're not going to walk and graduate? I mean, you can't give it back.
Correct.
So, because that would have been a carrot, right, to be able to walk the stage, and they're not going to be able
Dr.
to do
Vosberg,
that.
what's the process and protocol for that?
By the way, I'm not a fan.
Right, no, to your question, they would have to meet the requirements to get the diploma and be part of the ceremony. If they're short a few credits, then they can go to summer school and participate in the summer school graduation.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving it and then having to take it back. That would just be horrible. Thank you.
Mr. Connor, did you have a question? Or Ms. Pearson?
Yeah, so I can see the pandemic having a long-term effect on our students, kind of like a ripple effect, right?
Yes.
So even those students who are not seniors have suffered where it relates to their credits. So have we given any thought to helping them? Because I know we have a unique year,
Sure.
and prayerfully this will soon pass. However, there's still going to be some effects. Do we have anything in place for that, and how we can aid our students to get, quote unquote, get on track?
So I think what you're asking is, do we plan to reduce the graduation requirements for students moving forward who may currently be juniors or sophomores? Is that really the essence of your question? Or is your question really, how are we going to ensure that moving forward students have the credits that they need to graduate?
Yeah, all of it.
All of that. Okay, so at the moment, we are kind of really living in our data to understand which courses have been failed with the highest rate. We're also we've identified 1,211 students, grades 9 through 12, who failed 2 or more courses. We are sending letters home to their families, ensuring that they know and understand how to get enrolled in our summer credit recovery. And we've waived all the costs, provided transportation and breakfast and lunch during that program. So we're trying to remove as many barriers as possible and get in touch with kids now to get them enrolled in summer in the hopes that they can catch up on at least 2 of those credits to put them closer to on track at the start of the year. We also understand in this work with our freshman assistant principals, we've been learning a lot from their PLC as a part of our AROI study. And what we've learned from them is the tighter we are on case management, and the more, as Ms. French said, we have an adult that every student in the school can kind of be attached to. There's at least one person in the school to foster that relationship. The better chance we have of getting those students re-engaged and back on track. So we know that moving forward into the next school year, MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, our work with counselors are all going to be incredible areas of focus for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Connor.
First of all, I have to say thank you to thinking about this. I don't know exactly what prompted it, but this is really us responding to a situation and trying again to be flexible to meet the needs of our students and to get more to graduate. So I'm happy to see this.
Well, I have to thank Dr. Vosberg here for the nudge in this
Dr.
direction.
Vosberg, very good job, because this is really a good idea. But what I'm wondering is two things. Number one, I assume that we don't anticipate any effect on essentially admissions or anything like that, if we make these changes. So I know you said the core classes stay the same.
Core classes will remain the same for exactly that reason.
But the fact that we went down from 48 to 42, there's no unintended effect that you could see possible.
We still maintain compliance with the school code. What it does, however, is a student's transcript will still reflect their failing grade in the course that they failed. So the transcript remains accurate. We've simply not allowed that to be a barrier for PE or other electives from graduating high school.
Okay, so the fact is, if they are already admitted or anything else, the fact that the school district has allowed this should not affect anything.
It should not. In fact, our neighbors to the east just did something similar, District 100.
Okay. The other question is, because you mentioned specifically subject areas of PE, career and tech ed, fine arts, and other general electives, is there any impact on teacher staffing or anything like that, given this?
No, and really a benefit can actually just be to allow a student to focus on their core courses that they may be struggling with.
Right, okay, so in those areas, you don't see any effect on that kind? Okay, thanks.
For point of clarification is since that is going on as a failing grade, it is also part of their GPA.
It is, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? This will come back to us for a vote at our next board meeting on the 27th. And I guess the one comment I was thinking was that, so often it's these subjects like fine arts and PE and sports and all that keep our kids engaged. And it's been so hard to do that this year.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do band and orchestra and choir and all those things when you can't have everybody in the same room together, so.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and we talk about our students as in-person versus remote, and that, remote is harder, but really, in reality, all of our students have been remote at least to some degree during this year, and in some of our electives courses, it's actually significantly more difficult.
Sure. Okay, so this
clearly, Mr. Scrivano, you've never seen The Music Man, where they had the think method.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. I was actually in The Music Man at West High School when they had it. So.
And those of you that are too young, go watch The Music Man, and you will see immediately what I'm talking about.
All right.
And don't tell me about it.
Okay.
This has to wait because it was first time tonight? Is that why? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our next items are the consent portion of our agenda, including the following items: payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, the bid for custodial services, electronic message boards, the multi-carrier cellular public safety, distributed antenna system, the athletic trainer services rebid, the propane fuel rebid, smart boards, data access and evaluation agreement, the recurring contracts for title summer programming, the RPS 205 and Power School Group, the Winnebago County Health Department facility rental waiver fee, and the meeting minutes from March 30th, the contract purchase orders, the workers' compensation settlement agreement with IK, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration?
10D.
10D. Any others? Mr. Siegel?
10F.
10F. Okay. Any others? Okay. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items not pulled.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay, now we'll go back to the pulled item. I'll take a motion and a second to approve item 10D, which is the custodial services contract.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Siegel. Comments and questions? Mr. Connor.
I have one comment, and I'd like Mr. Phillips to add just a little bit of commentary. But on this one, the part that I'd like Mr. Phillips to comment on is why we wouldn't automatically take the low bid, and then also, a little bit about, what the bids were based on. I think it behooves, this is such a large contract. It's, it's $24.5 million. I mean, this is really one of the biggest things we do. So I think having Mr. Phillips comment on that context would be helpful. What I'm going to do is just say that having been involved with this, as a number of the board members have, this is a contract that has had a lot of issues, and really, I think great credit belongs to Mr. Phillips, but particularly Ms. Ellis, who shepherded a lot of the improvements on how we deal with this, including the surveys, the relationship with the folks in the building, particularly the teachers and all. I mean, really a good job by the administration on this. So this has been fraught with a lot of issues. And one of the things that I'll say is that if you've been on the board long enough, you do get a lot of criticism about this contract. And so I think from my point of view, one of the points of this is to respond to that and say that there has been some real listening done here and some planning and forethought. So I'm really, I want to thank everybody for their collective efforts to make this better and to reach out to the folks that really are the ones that, if you will, bear the brunt of any issues. But Mr. Phillips, if you could comment on, why this is, we're not taking the low bid, what's that based on, and what we're trying to accomplish here. Just briefly, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So first I want to clarify, this was not a bid, this was a request for proposal. So that's what
I meant.
Yeah,
sorry.
so that's what allows us not to have to take the low bid, but also look at other parameters that were established ahead of time. So to your point, Mr. Connor, we are recommending the 4th lowest bid to the Board of Education tonight. 3 things I really want to hit on that we were looking at as a reviewing team. First, we received 9 proposals, which we were very happy with. Of that 9, we identified 6 that we wanted to bring in for interviews. We interviewed those folks and then narrowed our field to 3 firms that we really wanted to do our reference checks and background on. Those being GSF, SSC, and LGC. So the important things we were looking for, number 1 was a commitment by the firm to develop and retain their personnel. That really has been one of our biggest challenges since in the 2.5 years I've been with the district, is consistent turnover and not having the FTE that was agreed upon throughout the contract. Second, and very important, was our zone managers from our custodial service contractor that are managing their zones. It's the follow-up and follow-through to make sure once an issue is identified that we're training our staff and how to properly do something, and then following through with our principals to make sure those things are getting done. And then lastly, a commitment to finding efficiencies through equipment use. And I do want to point out one of the highlights from this firm is they are utilizing some robotic technology in our larger schools, our high schools, to clean our field houses and larger corridors. So those were three very critical things we were looking for. When I originally brought this to the board, you may remember that we broke this into blocks. One of my desired outcomes was to lower the barrier of entry to maybe some smaller and mid-sized companies that can't clean 5 million square feet, but possibly could clean 2 million square feet. Unfortunately, we had nobody in that category submit a proposal. All the firms that did submit proposals submitted for both blocks, A and B. And a number of those vendors, their pricing was based off of getting both blocks A and B. So that wasn't the case with GSF, but many of the vendors that submitted pricing it was based off of receiving both blocks. The other thing I really want to point out here is GSF, who we're recommending, they're the fourth lowest, but they have the highest pay and benefit structure for their employees, which I think is the commitment we were looking for. And Miss Ellis has done some excellent background checks and reference checks on these folks. GSF is currently cleaning Woodward Governor on North Perryville. They also clean a couple of high schools and districts in the Chicago suburb area. All references that we checked came back very good, and we were checking on these specific items that were critical to us. One being the commitment to personnel, two being the zone manager follow through, and three, this commitment to equipment and efficiencies.
Any further comments or questions on that item? Not, we'll call the roll call on the approval of the custodial contract services.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Thank you for all that explanation. I think that's very helpful. And yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes?
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
All right, our next item that was pulled was the multi-carrier cellular public safety distributed antenna system. Is there a motion and a second to approve this item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Comments or questions? Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for not asking this question a lot earlier, but it literally just dawned on me as I pulled this up. I see that our budget for this particular item was $502,000. We had a lot of response, which was great. I think that's largely what yielded a way under budget bid. But there's almost a 10 times difference between the bottom bid and the top bid, and the preponderance of the bids are pretty near what we budgeted. And it just dawned on me, what's our confidence that they're actually going to give us what we want for a quarter of what we're willing to pay for it?
Yeah, this actually caught our attention too when these bids came in. So we did a thorough review of all the responses, and it really comes down to design and technology. When we put the budget together, it was based on and I'll share the 2 different design and technologies and how we budgeted for it. The one design and technology is based on a strong outside signal where you're just boosting inside the schools, but it's impeded by the signal is impeded by interior building materials and things like that. The second technology is where you don't have that outside signal, that cell signal, to promulgate through the building, and you have to actually connect to carrier networks. That's different equipment and much more expensive. when we first put the budget together, we were planning on it was going to be that second option. What we found with the specific buildings getting these these cell repeaters, which are Cherry Valley, Constance Lane West, and RISA, we have adequate or better cell reception from all of our major carriers in those areas, so we could go with the lesser expensive option. The proposed awardee of this bid actually is certified in this, and actually Motorola is certified in the public safety side as well, and has been doing this. So we've looked at the company as well, and we're very familiar with their work.
Any other comments or questions? If not, have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 10F, the multi-carrier cellular distributed antenna system.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. We'll move on now to the closed session consent agenda, including the following: the appointment of Scott Dimke as a 10-month high school assistant principal at Auburn High School, the salary adjustments for non-bargaining employees, and the notice to remedy for Shayna Alex, and the HR organizational report and addendum, and the closed session student discipline cases. Unless otherwise modified below, the board adopts and accepts the hearing officer's findings and recommendations in the following cases in which students expelled or suspended are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. Student 2052, the expulsion is held in abeyance upon an EIA agreement for the remainder of this school year and through the second trimester of next year. And the EIA student 8215 will receive an EIA. Is there a motion and a second to approve these closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any closed session items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Hearing none, I'll have a coordinator. Ms. Pearson.
13A and 14A.
Okay. 13A, I got to flip the page back. Okay. All right, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Okay. Can I do 13A and 14A together as one vote, or would you like them separately?
You can do it together.
All right, very good. I'll now take a motion and a second to approve the closed session student discipline cases that were pulled, 13A and 14A.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. There is no discussion, so I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the student discipline cases.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
No.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 no, 1 absent.
Okay. We are on to new business or agenda recommendations. Are there any steps that the board or administrators need to follow up on that I didn't have any listed. Did anybody else have one? All right.
1920 on track rate was requested.
Okay, okay.
I had that down for Mr. Lowry.
Yeah, 1920 on track record. Okay.
And just to be clear, you know, the reason that hasn't been widely reported is because it's pretty skewed data because the entire second semester got thrown out. So I don't know what we'll be able to accomplish with, but we can at least look at semester 1.
Right. Okay.
When you say it was thrown out, I thought that anybody who was passing when that March date hit ended up passing, right?
Right, but there was a whole 3-month period where students were sort of held harmless, so it would be difficult to make a comparison.
Okay, so we'll just look at that first semester as well.
That would be my
Recommending?
recommendation.
I'm fine with that,
Okay.
and just,
It would be very difficult to compare other
we're
years.
not going to use it for any of our, yeah, okay.
Will you send that in an update then, a superintendent update? Okay. All right. Any other items? Any other items for tonight? If not, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Siegel. Ms. Pearson, I'm sorry, I was looking this way. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:32.